Talk to Nick Freeman, criminal defence lawyer, because the e-scooters occasionally come up and come down in our estimation of what's going on in the world, and ministers are being urged to speed up an e-scooter law because the e-scooters haven't been, I would say, in quite as much evidence as they were, which I'm hoping means that not so many people are using the illegal ones. But Nick is a campaigner on this issue. Let's find out from him what he's hearing. Nick, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
So, I don't know about you, but I've noticed fewer e-scooters out and about in general. I mean, people are still on them, but we don't seem to have quite the kind of surge in numbers that we saw before. It could be possibly that we've had a lot of rain recently and it's a bit dangerous, and maybe we'll see them more as the summer months come to us. But what's the situation with this e-scooter law?
Well, the law is being delayed. The government have decided, the Department of Transport have decided that because of the cost of living crisis that priority must be given to other legislative processes rather than the e-scooter law. So it's been put on the back burner, which obviously will have an adverse effect on the micromobility industry. And there are lots of industries there waiting in terms of manufacture, all the associated businesses that run with these are waiting to see what's going to happen. So it's been put on the back burner. The government say it still remains a priority. It's important to remember that e-scooters are still covered by the Road Traffic Act, and
yes,
at the moment they are regarded as exactly the same way as a motorbike or a motor car. And you can have endorsements. You know all the law that applies to us motorists applies to e-scooters, subject to the usual caveat that you and I always talk about is that we never know who's on them, right, because they don't have an identification plate or any other means of identification. And of course, they do remain illegal on private roads, on public roads. You can only use them on private property. The rental schemes are, of course, still in operation. What the government were hoping to do was to introduce a special low-emission, carbon-free zone, limited to apparently 8 miles an hour, 13 kilometres per hour, which I'm sure is going to operate as a slight killjoy to many prospective e-scooter riders. If you're going to go at that speed, you might as well get out and walk or jog.
Well, exactly right. I mean, one of the other... correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm sure I've seen some of these new fangled rental scooters, which actually do have a sort of plate of one kind or another on the back, just before the back wheel, which appears to at least designate them as an individual numbered scooter.
Yes, you're absolutely right. The point is, there's an attempt there, but it's not highly visible. And
yes, you'd have to look for it, wouldn't you?
Well, you'd have to, if you look, from close quarters, you can probably see it. But if something is zipping along the pavement or zipping in and out of cars on the road, then it's very difficult to identify. So you want something that a camera or a naked eye is going to be able to pick up. And that then is traced to the registered keeper, and we have exactly the same system that operates for motorists. There's a legal duty to say who was using it, and then the police can decide whether or not they wish to proceed.
Yes.
That's what needs to happen, just to make people accountable and responsible, and that will make people, in my view, drive much more safely.
Yes.
So at the moment, the thing's on the back burner, and I think we're going to have a cost of living crisis for quite a long time. So I don't think much is going to happen in the near future, despite the fact that we're told it does remain a priority.
Yes. Although interesting, isn't it, that we've got an awful lot of activity at the moment going on in the courts, particularly around the ULEZ expansion, particularly around the use of these low traffic neighbourhoods, a lot of the things that are being introduced in all sorts of places around the country, not just in London by Sadiq Khan, but in places like Oxford, in Glasgow, in Leeds, in Bristol, in all kinds of places. Manchester, I think, is going to get one as well. There's a big sort of legal challenge going on, isn't there?
There is. I mean, Manchester's actually been delayed. The signs in Manchester saying, look, it's delayed at the moment, and we don't know how long. There's no date for it. And it is being challenged. And interestingly enough, one of the boroughs in London, Richmond, has decided to give certain people who are entitled to it a £50 voucher to try and help them deal with the ULEZ problems.
Yes.
Because obviously it hits people who are the least able to afford to pay for the problem. I mean, so ultimately, look, it's a very complex argument, isn't it? Because what's happening at the moment, we're being pushed towards electric vehicles, and electric vehicles are much heavier,
yes,
and the tyre footprint and the brake footprint is actually leading to an increase in pollutants 52%. So there doesn't seem to be an orchestrated approach to really what we're trying to achieve, which is a cleaner environment.
No, exactly. Well, we also heard this week that not only are the cars heavier as they're electric cars, they're actually damaging the infrastructure of the roads and the bridges of our cities because, the weight is quite considerably more. And if you think about it, I was on a bus the other day which was proudly stating it was an electric bus. I hate to think how heavy that is. Yeah,
well, these batteries at the moment are incredibly heavy. Cars are getting larger to accommodate all the safety features, the batteries, etc., etc. So the weight of these cars is just astronomical, as I'm bound to say, is the price.
Yes.
Most of them are just not affordable. You look at a car and it's suddenly, it looks like it's a £25,000 car, which is a lot of money, and it's sort of £45,000-50,000.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, I spoke to a guy last weekend who actually was at a street party I was at, who was an electric car designer, and he said, I actually tell people, don't buy an electric car. And he knows what he's talking about, because he says they're not ready for purpose, they're not fit for purpose, they're too expensive, they're not efficient, and in fact, there's not enough administrative charging points or infrastructure to make it easy for you to drive one.
Well, in terms of the charging anxiety, the range anxiety, the infrastructure is 70% behind its target. So, in other words, they've met 30%. So, you have an electric car, you're going to have a range problem. And in addition to that, it's exacerbated because when you actually find a charger, you find it's not working, it's too slow, this or it's that, or there's a huge queue. And it just doesn't work for the way we live our lives. And we do seem to be falling far behind many other countries who have just got their act together. And we're looking, very much like a third world country in this respect. And it is clearly going to be a way forward. And with technology, the batteries are going to be smaller and lighter. At the moment, interestingly enough, we talk about batteries. There's a huge fire risk associated with these lithium batteries, which is causing now most of the rail networks to actually ban having them at stations because of the intensity of the heat caused by the battery, which in itself causes a fire.
Yes.
So,
well, there was a big fire in Milan the other day. We didn't find out at the end what the cause of it was, but it was a van that went on fire. A lot of people said to me, I wonder if it was an electric van, because they do have this capability of sort of going up in flames spontaneously. The other story, of course, that we did this week, Nick, you might be interested in, was from the Washington Post, a story about a country called Guinea in West Africa, which is currently being plundered for all of its mineral wealth by Chinese mining companies. And they are completely not only ruining the country itself, but impoverishing the people. They're making blasts that destroy buildings. There's red dust everywhere. The plants and the palm trees that grow there are being stifled because of the environmental damage being done. And none of these wokist kind of, Extinction Rebellion types or Just Stop Oil types have got a thing to say about it. And this is basically,
I wonder why that is.
The garden of Africa being completely and utterly poisoned by China.
Yeah. It's raped by commercial greed, isn't it? Because have to find these natural resources, and they're not mined in a sympathetic way to the environment or to the people who are affected, the people who live there. And so we're just trying to solve one problem by creating arguably a much bigger problem. And what manufacturers are talking about now, they're talking actually about exhaust carbon emission being free, which is an acknowledgement that actually there's a huge carbon footprint being caused by the rest of this process, which just doesn't make any sense, does it?
It really doesn't. Now, you made part of your reputation defending famous people from speeding fines. I don't know whether you know that you could have had a very godly client if you'd been keeping your eyes peeled, because the Archbishop Welby, or Wokeby as I like to call him, has just been done for speeding 25 miles an hour on a 20 down the Albert Embankment. Naughty. And it went to court as well, which must mean that he didn't answer the original letter.
Well, he would have undoubtedly been offered a speed awareness course.
Yes.
Unless, of course, he's already done one in the past 3 years. Failing that, he's been offered a fixed penalty. I don't know why he wouldn't have taken advantage of that. Sometimes there's a problem with the licence if you have a name like the Archbishop of Welby.
Yes.
What name's the licence in? So that can cause problems. Normally, if you take it to court, you want to fight it. I don't know whether he has fought it, but he didn't ring me. That's all I can say.
Well, he's been handed a £510 legal bill and 3 penalty points. So he's in quite a bad way, I'd say.
Well, he could have had it. He could have had it done and dusted, with a course or £100 and 3 points, or he could have chosen to fight it. But of course, the victim surcot charge now, is a stealth tax, 40% of the fine, which is just incredible, isn't it? When not long ago it never existed,
no.
And then it was 10%, and all of a sudden, very quietly, it's 40% of the fine.
Well, I hope he's been honest about his earnings, because, they have got £8 billion in their investment fund at the Church of England. I think he should have been charged at least £100,000 for this speeding fine.
Not sure that's down to his commercial enterprise. There is a speed limit. Well, there is a fine limit for speeding.
There is, absolutely right. Delightful to see you again, Nick. Thank you very much indeed. Nick Freeman, criminal defence lawyer. He could have got Wokeby off from his speeding fine, but imagine that. He went to fight he didn't want to pay the fine, and he went to fight it, or was it because they couldn't recognise his name? The Archbishop of Lambeth Palace, 25 in a 20. Naughty, naughty. Disgraceful. Doesn't he know he could have hit a migrant going at that speed, crossing the road, without knowing which way to look, because he came from another country? Terrible. This is Talk TV.